seem incapable of cutting spending, reining in entitlements, or making the choices that promote stronger economic growth. Let's go back to just a couple of years ago, 2008, and listen to the campaign trail promises.
I have to make sure that young people, young women and young men, understand that I am dedicated to the proposition of handing off to them a safer and more prosperous world.
We know that we have to get spending under control in Washington so that we're not mortgaging our children's future under a mountain of debt. The young people here, your future, under a mountain of debt.
Flash forward 5 years, and some of the students who sat through those speeches may still be looking for work. The unemployment rate for 18 to 34-year-olds was almost 10% last month, and this group has lagged behind ever since the recession. It's even higher, these numbers, if you consider underemployment. And those who are working are making less. Wages for 25 to 34-year-olds have fallen an average of 8% since President Obama took office, while the bills keep piling up. This group has an average $45,000 in personal debt, with a lot of that typically coming from student loans. And then there's this.
Well, I need this, you know, and I need this, and I'm going to take this, and no, I'm the old person. I need this. You have to take care of me. I want it. It's mine.
John Stossel recorded that little exercise in entitlement almost, 4 years ago. Those babies have not yet graduated first grade, and in just that time, the national debt has grown by $4.6 trillion. Those poor little things. While the economic crash gets some of the blame, here's the ugly truth about where the money really goes. Entitlement spending this year was $1.5 trillion, or just less than half of the total federal budget. By 2020, that grows to $2.4 trillion, an increase of more than 50%. And that does not even account for Obamacare and what happens with our bottom line if this experiment costs more than projected. Here's a closer look at some of that. If you want to hear the president pitching health care, a college campus is a safe bet. He has made no less than 12 appearances at universities and colleges, repeating his most popular promises.
If you're a young adult or entrepreneur striking out on your own, you're covered. If you lose your job and your health care with it, you're covered.
This speech was just days before the official launch of the now malfunctioning website. And there's a reason why he loves college campuses. That's because the success of the president's signature legislation hinges on the so-called young invincibles, the healthy 18 to 35-year-olds who don't spend a lot on health care and may not even have insurance. The administration needs nearly 3 million to sign up by the end of the year, and even recruited Hollywood to help.
Under the Affordable Care Act, you'll stay under your parents' plan until you're 26.
Thanks, Fixer.
But will the campaign work? Weeks after the troubled Obamacare launch, a Gallup poll found young people are the ones most likely to support this law. But that doesn't mean they'll enroll. Under Obamacare, these millennials are the group most likely to bear the biggest burden and reap the smallest reward. Studies show that people aged 21 to 29 who do not qualify for government help will see average premiums in the Obamacare exchanges increase by 42%. Compare that to people aged 60 to 64 who do not qualify for assistance. They'll see average premiums increase by just 1%. And the troubled healthcare.gov website isn't making things any easier. One Democratic senator went as far as to suggest that the broken website and reports of millions of Americans losing their coverage are pushing away the very people this law needs most.
What I worry about is that there's such a crisis of confidence, people won't enroll. And the very people we need to enroll, particularly our young people, to make this whole system work, won't happen.
Well, some of those young people are in studio with us tonight, trying to figure out how they feel about how the economy is going and what the future holds for them. We've gathered a group of Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, folks of all different stripes, and we wanted to get their feel for what the future holds. Let me start with you, Hannah Benicki. You lean right. What do you see when you hear stats like that about how the premiums are going to be for young people and how the national debt is piling up, despite the promises we just heard from both sides of the aisle as recently as 5 years ago?
I think it's alarming to think that we were so easily lied to and that my generation believed those lies and bought into those promises, and now we're really reaping the negative consequences of that. And I'd like to see my generation step up and really realize what we're being told, and that we'd go deeper to see what those promises really meant back when they were told to us.
And whether they were true at the time. Jeremy Epstein, you're a Democrat. And respond to Pamela's or to Hannah's comment about lies. Do you believe that your generation, has been lied to by the politician?
Well, I don't know exactly about lied to. I think that's a strong word. But when you look at some of the statistics that you brought up earlier, it's obviously that we were misled. I think lying is a very strong word. We were obviously misled with some of the promises that were given to us, and they're not following through. So that's obviously a problem. And
how do you feel about that, though? Because, I mean, when you look at college campuses today, they overwhelmingly lean left. The student body leans left. And I think people had a lot of belief in President Obama that he was going to change things and that he was going to be a president in particular for young people.
Look, clearly, in 2008, my generation especially, we bought into President Obama. We liked his energy. We thought he was really going to change things. If you fast forward to this election, I think he won partially because I feel like you don't throw a president out who's trying to reform after his first term. You're trying to give him more time. And obviously, there's something going wrong with the Obamacare. It's struggling. It's not working. The website doesn't work. So I think we're not headed in the right direction. I think we were misled, as I said earlier, and I think that's a very big problem.
Of the Democrats on this panel, raise your hand if you're feeling any buyer's remorse. None. Okay, so you still back the president who you supported, Anthony Marino. So you're a liberal.
Yeah.
And you support this
Yes.
president?
Yeah. Yes.
And how do you feel about how it's gone for young people?
I mean, it's obviously not ideal, but it hasn't been ideal for anybody. I mean, there's really the numbers that we were read earlier and what we've been hearing again. We were even just joking and laughing about it, that it's pretty heavy stuff. I don't even know where to begin with those numbers regarding the national debt and the positions that we've been put in. But it's one of those things where we kind of have to look ahead, not really look behind.
That's what we're trying to do tonight.
Yeah, figure out
But
exactly.
the future doesn't look so good for you. I got to tell you honestly. The stats, as we've seen them so far, are bad. They're bad. I mean, the national debt, the $17 trillion. I feel it as a mother. You guys are actually going to be living it soon and in your careers feeling the results of it. When you think $17 trillion, let me ask you, Brian Morgenstern, what do you think?
I think that is shocking. And the debt has almost tripled in a decade. We just saw the statistics about how much it's gone up just over the past 4 or 5 years. And I'm worried not just that it exists, but that nobody seems really interested in tackling it. And the only people who even talk about it seem to be the right-wingers who don't necessarily resonate so much with our generation. And I think some of that has to do with a logical disconnect when you get to the social issues. They talk about small government in some contexts, but not every context. And so the fact that it exists and the lack of political will to address it are what really those are the things that are alarming to me.
And you guys are the ones who are going to be left holding the bag. Much more on exactly what that means for you and how you're going to get out of that coming up in just a bit.